Here we go, geometry students. It's time for Chapter 4, Section 3. We're talking about congruent triangles. So up until now, we've talked about how to find the various angles of a triangle, the different kinds of triangles, and if you haven't realized it by now, if you're planning my Christmas present, you should think about what my favorite shape might be, okay? Even if you just draw me a pretty one. Okay, be good. Triangles, yeah. All right, do these warm-up questions. Pause the video right now. Number 1, I expect you to draw a picture. It will help you name all sides and angles. Hint, you should have 6 things written down. And number 2 is a theorem from last section. And number 3 is a definition from a couple chapters ago. Ready, go. Pause the video. Okay, we'll go over the answers to those questions tomorrow in class. I want you to write down some definitions now. So this heading on the top of your notebook page, remember we like to start a new page, a fresh page. You should write Geometry Section 4.3 on these notes pages, okay? We're going to be ripping them out and putting them in the notes section of our binder so we can stay super organized. The first definition I want you to write down is the word congruent. We remember from previous chapters that congruent means the same shape and size. Same shape and size. The next word I want you to write down defining is the corresponding angles and sides. This can be for a rectangle, a square, or a triangle. Any kind of polygon that's closed figure has corresponding angles and sides. You remember this from the transversal picture. Corresponding means top left, for example, both top left angles, or the sides on the left-hand side, okay? Basically, they're the ones that match, okay? Corresponding means to match. Pause the video, get all that written down. You should have more than just in the same position written down. You should have the words I'm saying. Give yourself some hints. The next thing I want you to write down is that polygons are congruent if and only if their corresponding sides and angles are congruent. And lastly, let's write down the definition of congruent triangles. You can abbreviate this DEF period if you want to. Definition of congruent triangles says that all 6 parts must be congruent. That means 3 angles, 3 sides. Pause the video, get it written down. Okay, this chart here I would not write down. It's in your textbook, and if you want to take some time writing it down, fine. I just wanted you to see it. Basically, corresponding angles are the ones that are marked the same, for example, in this picture. So A must be corresponding to D. Notice that the name of the triangle, it's all about the name, about the order. It's all about the order. I know, I'm a great singer. You guys want me to keep singing It's All About the Bass, no treble. The point is, it's all about the order. So if A corresponds to D and side AB corresponds to side DE, then guess what? It's all about the order down here. You better put AB next to DE. And this is probably the most important thing to learn from this section. Same goes with this polygon, this rectangle here. If I'm going to put PQRS, then PQ better correspond to WX, since that's the order. Remember, it's all about the order. Okay, next slide. Just remember, vertices that are the endpoints of a side are called consecutive vertices. Okay, let me go back a picture. Consecutive is an important word. It means in order, right? It's all about the order. So consecutive sides for triangle ABC are sides AB, then side BC. Consecutive sides for this rectangle are PQ and WX, then QR, then XY. Those are consecutive. You got to go around the triangle or the square or the rectangle in order. Okay. No need to write this down. Let's just talk about it in a minute. We're talking about the order again. So in a congruent statement, they just want you to remember to make sure you put them in order with their corresponding parts. Okay, let's start with example 1. If I tell you 2 triangles are congruent, and I want you to identify all the pairs of corresponding parts, let's start with the angles. Look at the order again. P is first and so is S, so they go together. Q is first and so is T, they go together. S or R is third, W is third, they go together. You can start to name the corresponding sides. Remember, sides require 2 letters. Notice that PQ is first, so ST must be its corresponding side. QR is second, that means TW must be its corresponding side. PR must be corresponding with SW. Those are in the first and third place when we named it, and this is in the first and third place. Again, we're going to do proofs in a minute, and I'm not trying to give you fear or nervousness or make you scared. I'm just telling you, you can do this part. This part is very important. Example 1. Just match things up. It's like a puzzle. Okay, example 2a, we're going to use the fact of what goes together now and solve for things. You can see over here in my picture they give me algebraic expressions. Since triangle ABC is congruent to DBC, I know that angle A must match D. A and D go together. They're in the first spot. See that? First. A is 49.3. Guess what you should be doing right now? Pausing this video, drawing this picture. Guess what angle D is? 49.3. You guessed it. They match. Okay. Next thing you should notice is because this angle right here, ACB, should match DCB. And since this one has a little box, that means this one is equal to 90. You guessed it. All right, we can go through this kind of quickly. We're going to set those 2 expressions equal to 90. That one expression, 2x minus 16 equals 90. You know why. The definition of congruent angles tells us their measures are equal. Because they're right angles, we know they're congruent. And because these 2 lines are given the perpendicular symbol, we know that both of those angles are in fact right angles, which makes them equal to, you guessed it, 90. You can do the algebra quickly, solve for x, and we get x equals 53. Again, anytime you want to pause, you can pause it. This is algebra stuff. We're not going to stop and do every little step. Okay, what about if they asked me to find the measure of angle DBC? This one, DBC. Remember, we already know that this is 49.3. And because this is 90 and this is 49.3, we can just take 90 and subtract 49.3. That's the shortcut. But I noticed on your quiz you guys are really getting comfortable with the triangle sum theorem. So we're going to write it out equal to 180. We're going to say that all 3 angles of the triangle add to 180. That's the triangle sum theorem. Then we're going to plug in our unknown, which is ABC, add 90 and 49.3. When we subtract all of that, we get a measure of angle ABC is 40.7. Remember, we want DBC, and we found ABC. Well, isn't ABC the angle congruent to angle DBC because of this statement? Absolutely. The measure of angle DBC equals the measure of angle DBC, because these 2 are congruent, makes their measures equal, equals 40.7 because of the transitive property. All right, example 3 is a proof. So here are your givens. I do want you to copy this down. So you're going to have to pause this and you're going to have to copy it down. I'm going to talk through it at the regular pace and you're going to pause it and write it all down. So the first thing, of course, you should be writing down is the givens, the proof statement, and this picture. Ready, go. Okay, hopefully you're finished with that now because you paused it. Then the next thing you should write on your paper, because this is a proof, is a statements and reasons column. Make sure you leave yourself lots of space. Ready, go. Okay, now we're going to walk through the steps of the proof. So I'm going to take each of these givens. Okay, this is very important. When we do section 3 triangle proofs, we have to prove all 6 corresponding parts congruent. So what I've done is I've made these little puzzle pieces up here for you. 3 S's and 3 A's. The S's stand for sides, since we have 3 sides of a triangle, and the A's stand for angles. So if you're going to put an angle congruent to an angle, we're going to move these down as we progress through the proof. Also, you'll notice I put my picture over here. When I do this on the board, these on the board, I usually do the marking. So you should be doing that too. So let's start with our first given. Angle YWX and YWZ are right angles. That means they're congruent, right? Angle this and angle this are congruent because they're right angles. Now it would be helpful for you tomorrow to make sure you have your chapter 1 and 2 justifications. We're going to start using them. Why are they congruent? Because they're right angles. And we have a theorem called the right angle congruence theorem. Okay, so let's move one of these A's down. Okay, we've marked our first day. We're 1/6 of the way done. We need 6 things. Guess what we're going to do next? Copy A given. It doesn't matter which one. I'm just going to choose the next one. The next given says that YW bisects that angle. That means that this line in the middle bisects this angle. You should be tracing this angle with your pencil. X, Y, Z. It means that this little guy here is congruent to this little guy here. In other words, XYW is congruent to ZYW. My Z's off my page here. This one over here. Guess what letter we're going to move down there? Another A. We have another angle congruent to another angle. We're going to be 2/6 of the way through. Okay, so I move the A next to the statement that says 2 angles are congruent. Remember the hints, right? These are right angles, so guess what your next reason is? Something to do with a right angle. These are a bisector. Guess what the next reason is? Definition of angle bisector. Okay, let's jump to the next given. The next given says that W is a midpoint of something. Guess what our next reason is? Definition of midpoint. What does this mean? W is the midpoint of segment XZ. That means that this W is in the middle. That makes this congruent to this, which are 2 sides. In other words, XW congruent to ZW using the definition of midpoint. Again, this time I'm going to move an S down. Okay, so far we have 2 angles in one side. The next statement that I'm going to write is something that you're just going to have to trust me on. Whenever 2 triangles share a side, that means that that side is congruent to itself. And if you remember, this is one of those properties from chapter 3. It was called the reflexive property, and you may have thought, why do we need to say that something's congruent to itself? And we were prepping ourselves for this chapter. When this side is shared by 2 triangles, we say it's congruent. So now we have 2 A's and 2 S's. The next thing that we're going to do is recognize that when the first 2 angles of a triangle are congruent, guess what we can say about the third angle? It's also congruent. That makes this one congruent to this one using the third angles theorem. So I mark that one with an A, and then I list my last given, which says that XY segment is congruent to YZ. That's this one and this one. You can mark these in your picture. You should have 6 markings now. And we have just finished all 6 parts. We have 1, 2, 3 sides and 1, 2, 3 angles. Since we have all 6 parts congruent, we can list our proof statement now, which said that triangle XYW is congruent to triangle ZYW, and the reason is definition of congruent triangles. Just a little hint here. Whenever I ask you to prove triangles congruent for section 3, you're going to always have your last reason be definition of congruent triangles. Remember, it just says that all 6 parts are congruent. Okay, this is going to be it for tonight. We will do another proof in class tomorrow, and we will do a lot of little individual one-step proofs. Make sure that you have all of these notes written down in order to get your homework credit, and I will see you tomorrow.